So at this time, I'd like for us to receive Brother Yusha.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is welcome. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of God, who is most gracious, most merciful. I don't know if I will be able to tell you a story quite as colorful as the one you just witnessed, or as interesting. I'll do my best to attempt, God willing, inshallah. As the brother introduced me, my name is Yusha Evans, or some people know me as Joshua Evans. It's the same thing. The two words are synonymous. Yusha and Joshua are synonymous. Yusha is Arabic, Joshua is English. But they both are the very same name, Joshua. And I changed my name when becoming Muslim. Since I am short of time, because I did get trapped in some very serious traffic, I'm going to try to be very quick and tell you a really, really long story in a very, very short amount of time. So bear with me if I speak too fast. Feel free to raise your hand, tell me to slow down, throw something at me, whatever you feel is necessary. I was born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina in a very, very strict religious Methodist upbringing. I was raised by my grandparents who, as they say, old-fashioned. Just to give you some glimpse into what I mean by old-fashioned and very strict religious, I'm going to use gender issues just because they paint a very good picture. When it came to girls, when I reached the age of puberty and started becoming interested in girls and not thinking they just had cooties, girls were a no-no in my house. Not so much a no-no as a sense that if I wanted to have a girl over to the house, it had to be an appointment set. My grandmother and grandfather had to know they were coming, and when they came, we had to sit in the formal living room, which in most southern homes you have a formal living room, and you have a dining room and all these other things. The formal living room, and my grandmother either had to be present in the room, or we had to be in the room while she was in the kitchen, cooking whatever with the door wide open so that she could hear the conversation and know what was going on. So that was the type of understanding that they had, and this was the type of strictness of the home that I grew up in. We were very religious in the sense that we went to church every Sunday. We went to church Sunday evenings and sometimes on Wednesdays. And then Wednesdays became more regular as I got more older. That was considered in the South very religious. You were considered a very good patron of the church if you went Sunday evening, and Wednesday. And that was not very difficult considering the fact that the church from my home was separated by two houses. You walk out of my house, you took a right, you passed one house, you passed another house, and you walked straight into the wall of the church. So it was not very difficult for me to go to church that often. And that was how I was raised. We went to church. Before we ate, we prayed. Before I went to sleep, I prayed. Every time my grandmother had any commotion happen in the house, she prayed. The Bible was always open. We always read the Bible. My grandfather was always teaching me about, Noah and Moses and, David and Jesus and, all these good things. So this was just the environment that I was brought up in. My mother had stepped out of the picture. My father was working 2 jobs, which was the reason I was being raised by my grandparents. And this continued on until about 13 or 14 years of age. At about 13 or 14, I decided to start attending the youth services on Saturday evenings at my church. Youth services on Saturday evening were quite different from a normal Methodist Sunday service. Methodist services are very formal. You don't talk, you sit down, you listen to the service, you get up, you go outside of the church, and then you talk to each other, greet each other, and you go home. Then, there's no shouting, there's no amen, go ahead, brother. There's none of that in a Methodist, Southern Methodist church. You just don't do that. If you say something in a Methodist church, people look at you like, what is wrong with you? So, but Saturday evenings were quite different. They were held in the gym, and there was music, and there was games. We played basketball, we played all types of different games. And then we ate pizza, we ate, hamburgers or grilled out or whatever they did on Saturday evenings. And then at the end, the youth minister would give about a 30-minute sermon, on whatever the topic was that he decided to give it on. And the youth minister was a 19-year-old friend of mine. He wasn't really a friend of mine. He was someone that lived as I was walking to the church. He was the last house before you got to the church. So I had known him all my life growing up. And he graduated high school. I was a sophomore, he had graduated. So in my freshman year, he used to give me a ride to high school before I had gotten my license. And as I started going to the youth services, we became very good friends. And he was attending a university in Greenville called Bob Jones University. Anybody familiar with the South and with Bible colleges, well, Bob Jones will ring a bell very much. It's considered one of the most conservative Christian colleges in the country. In the fact that men and women are separated at Bob Jones. You don't walk holding hands on campus. The women have to have there's a dress code for women. They have to wear clothes that are not revealing. They have to wear shirts that come to the ankles, shirt sleeves that come to the ankles, skirts that come to the wrists, skirts that come to the ankles. The men have to dress in an attire that is not, flashy and things of this nature. So Bob Jones is very, very conservative, which fit along with the scheme of how I was raised. So I wanted to attend Bob Jones as well, and he was attending Bob Jones, and his major was textual criticism. Any of you here who might be a major of religion or anything of that nature might understand what textual criticism is. Textual criticism, to try to make a huge field very visible, it's a study that takes many manuscripts, any type of manuscript. When it comes to Christian textual criticism of the Bible, it takes manuscripts of the Bible, which we know just of the New Testament, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies of the New Testament. The book of Matthew might have 50, 60, 70, hundreds of thousands of copies, and none of these copies are exactly the same. Not one single is exactly the same to the letter. So what a textual critic does is he sorts through all of these. He learns ancient Greek, ancient Hebrew, and Aramaic, and he tries to find out the date on these texts, and then which ones are the oldest, and not only which ones are the oldest, but which ones are the most original. And that what makes it so complex is that the oldest might not be the original, because the oldest might have been a copy that was copied from an altered text, and then that was copied and copied and copied and copied and copied. Or you might have the newer text, the newest one might have been copied directly from the original, so it might then in turn, even though it's the newer text, be the most original. So that's the job of a textual critic, which is not a very easy job. So this was his major. He was studying textual criticism. So as I befriended him, I became a layman textual critic, because as he was studying, I was studying. I was his study partner. I was a person that he shot ideas off of. I read his papers, things of this nature, and I read his textbooks. I would listen, he would record some of the lectures, and I would listen to them. So as he was studying, I was studying, and I decided in my sophomore year, I enrolled at Bob Jones because there's a very long waiting list. At that time, it was a few years long. So I had already enrolled at Bob Jones and already decided my major was going to be textual criticism. And since that was the case, me and him together decided to take up a study of the Bible. We said to ourselves, and he told me that he said that if this is our book, this is what we call BIBLE, this is the basic instructions before leaving earth. Therefore, if this is the book, this is the Bible, we need to study it, we should know it, because this is what is going to get us into heaven. This is what is going to give us the guidelines and the evidences of the salvation of Jesus Christ. This is the evidence, this is the proof of it. So he said we need to know this book. So we began studying the Bible, and we started from Genesis 1:1. And we decided we're going to read through it from beginning to end, beginning to end, beginning to end. So in doing this on my own, as he was going to school and things of this nature, he had a job also. He was going a little slower than me. It took me, in the whole period that I did this, I read through it about 6-7 times in about a period of 3 years. 2.5, 3 years, I went through it 6 or 7 times. And the Bible is a pretty big book. I will give it that. It's a pretty long read. But if you focus on it, and if you grew up in the environment that I grew up, that after school you did your schoolwork, and that was about it. I did not really go outside of the home much. Friends came over and things of that nature, but I was not really, given that much freedom to go out at that time. So I really was involved in these studies. And when he came home, I always wanted to have something to show him, because I always go to his house as soon as he came home from work or came home from school.